This is
Oh, that's beautiful.
a piece of Japanese lace paper.
Yeah, very nice.
And it is folded in a pattern that is identical to this.
Oh, wow.
But it's different result because of the difference in the paper, because of the difference in which colors I dip it in, and how dilute or strong they are, how long I dip, because it's seconds. I can just dip it in and take it out. How strong or dilute that is makes a difference in the tide lines that can be achieved. The tide lines are these little tiny layers of color.
So I keep telling T, chemistry's so important.
I don't really know the chemistry of it. I know how it works. I know that it
does
works.
It does it.
Oh, this is a little bit of dish soap. That changes the surface tension, as you know. This is the kind of ink that I like to use best. But any kind of waterproof ink, so Sumier or black calligraphy ink, this would have been some sort of garage sale, estate sale find. This particular paper is a Sumier paper. You probably have seen it at the art supply stores for Chinese or Japanese brush painting. You can buy it in a pad or you can buy it in rolls. This, as I said earlier, is a lace paper. It's a Japanese lace paper. One is looking for a paper that functions like a paper towel, where it just soaks up the water. If it doesn't soak up the water, there's still ways to work with it, but the paper is resistant to absorbing the liquid. And this has some sizing in it, so it is resistant, and it's a devilish paper to work with. Itajime, I-T-A-J-I-M-E.
Itajime.
It means tie-dye, and you may have heard a Japanese term called shibori.
Yeah.
It's a type of shibori. You can use any kind of holder that covers two purposes from my point of view. One is to keep, once it gets wet and you're still manipulating it, to keep the surface of the paper from getting roughed up, because it's very soft paper and it would start to wear and ball like a used sweater, and then you might have a hole there. And the other purpose is to manage how the liquid comes into the paper. It's not like cloth tie-dye where you're trying to clamp it so tightly that you're preventing liquid from coming in. I want the liquid to come in, but I want to be in control of how it comes in.
How many years have you been doing this, Susan?
Since 1990.
Yeah.
And I was doing tie-dye. Well, I tie-dyed all my underwear before I went to college.
It's one way to label it.
Well, I guess I wanted to experiment. But I've been very interested in resist dyeing. And this is a kind of resist dyeing. You're stopping something from happening. Or as I explained, you're actually managing how the color comes in. To start the folding, I take a piece of paper. I didn't bring any that were unfolded, or not yet folded. This is the size I wanted to work on today because it's small. So this is a piece of paper that came from a Japanese book, an antique Japanese book. And the paper has been block printed with a text. And it is handmade paper. You can see the little binding holes that are still in it. So I fold the paper in half and open it up and then fold it in half on these two sides. And then lay it down over the table and fold the existing folds up like this.
It's like making a fan.
It is like making a fan.
But getting precise.
Yeah.
Getting fairly precise by doing it in half and then quarters and so forth. And by now I can do this in the dark, the way people knit or crochet on the bus or while walking, or they spin, kicking a drop spindle or something while they're herding sheep. I was told by a Japanese individual at one point, she said, well, first I had heard that this is work that Japanese farmers did in the wintertime when they weren't repairing equipment or they couldn't farm. They could sit at their kitchen table, which has a little burner under it, and they just got a pit under the table, and they put a big blanket over the table, and their feet are warm, and they could work on top of the table and do this while staying warm but being productive. Later someone said, well, you know, in Japan, the people who do that really aren't much able to do anything else. So they were referring to it as a disability person's activity. Maybe someone who was autistic and had the ability to be precise and to really care about repetition, that this was the kind of work that that person could do.
Is the folding, or you mean the dyeing?
The folding, and I don't know about the dyeing part, but
the folding.
That's what this person was referring to. But and maybe the dyeing as well. But that Japanese person was trying to inform me that I was doing something below my station. Which, it's just a difference in cultural understanding or perception. So, we have something folded. This is a different kind of paper. If I want to do one of the other folds, it would be a right angle fold. And this is how it goes. I'm matching up with the edges. And if the edges are not matching, then I've done something wrong. And again, I'm preventing the baggy inner knee business. And
did you figure out these yourself by doing all these folds?
Mostly. There was a book called Shibori, The Inventive Art of Japanese Manipulated Resist Dyeing, written by Yoshiko Wada, which has a section on doing this with cloth. And then there are numerous 1970s, 1965, 1975 tie.
Let the fun begin.
Let the fun begin.
We're all waiting for the color.
Yeah. So I'm just going to put a little color in there. And this is water. This is some India ink with water. This is isopropyl alcohol, which, as I told you earlier, changes the surface tension. And it's what causes the little tide lines, those little flushes of color.
I want to get your hands doing this time.
So, who am I going to start with? I'm going to start with black, and then I'm going to go into the yellow. Maybe try to go into the yellow. I should have made that shorter. But because I dipped this side more than this side, there will be a slight greater degree of yellow here. If I go into the alcohol first, and then into the red, and then into the purple, and maybe I'm going to go yellow again, just because I can see what's in here. This is another reason why I like the clear plastic, because I can observe how the colorant is moving in.
It's bubbling.
Air bubbles are coming out. And so on the outside here, it's already penetrated all the way, but I bet you the inside layer isn't fully penetrated. And if I just wait a minute, it'll probably get there, or I can add more liquid. So, because this was this was a rectangle, and because of the way I dipped it, it's coming out more like stripes. And I never unfold the last piece until it's the last piece to be unfolded. Because if I unfold it, it invariably rips. I don't know why.
So the pattern is a function of how it's folded directly, is it?
How it's folded and how it's dipped. How long you dip. And
It amazes me that you don't get mud, because when you paint, right, and you do those mixings.
And this was dipped in black. And I followed it up with yellow twice. And it's pushed it out of the way. And yes, there's green.
Wow.
But sometimes you can get just yellow, 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 depending on how concentrated something the black might be.
Oh, isn't that delicate? Oh, that's lovely.
The
And
black really stands out in this one now. The letters, I mean.
Yes. And I did dip one side in the alcohol first, which was basically colorless. So that's why there's colorless on the inside. where if I had not done that first, then it would have had color on the inside. And sometimes I have to do a little tiny tug to get these layers to open, and if they don't open, then I have to wait 5 minutes till they've evaporated a little bit.
So did you try all kinds of different papers, or found papers, or as well? Because you had a...
I have tried everything I could think of, and if you give me a new idea, I'll try that too.
Do you also do it on handmade paper?
Sure. The thinner the paper, the more precise the folds. But I have done it on a handmade sheet of paper that was 8 feet by 8 feet. Made with something called New Zealand flax that I bartered an artist for at a paper meeting. And it works just fine if you know how to handle paper. And I've been trained as a paper maker, so I know how to handle paper. So that's basically what there is. And I will continue to mess around, and you can watch me mess around.